Some ball here, talk some baseball, because we had Alex on the show and talked to him and wanted to get you on. And one of the recent episodes that I listened to from you guys did a great job summarizing the trade deadline, I thought. And Alex was a little down about it. I had him on the show, I think like the week after, and he was a little bit better about it. You were a little bit more positive. So I'm curious, with now a few weeks from the trade deadline, kind of what your thoughts are with installing these new players and where we're at with obviously a team that's playing a lot better than they were surrounding the trade deadline and the All-Star break there.
Yeah, that must have been a roller coaster ride to have Alex on right after the trade deadline. He was fired up, and honestly, that's part of what makes sports fandom so good. Is like Alex and I agree on just about everything, but like on the trade deadline, I thought we both had kind of our own separate views. Both made sense, and like eventually, kind of one will come to pass. Yeah, I was pretty bullish on what the Tigers did at the deadline. I kind of am operating under the influence of the fact that the Tigers just kind of play a different financial game right now than the big spenders in baseball, the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Mets, all these teams. It's not that the Tigers can't succeed, can't win, because they absolutely can. Obviously, they're the best team in the AL. But to go deep, you have to do it in a different way. And to me, that way, and obviously to Scott Harris also, that way is developing from within, not taking any shortcuts, and just letting the best talent we have take the field eventually. And to me, that never jived with the idea that they were going to make a huge move. Like they were never going to move Briseño for like a big time closer, for example. I thought there was a chance that they might have actually dug into that a little bit for Eugenio Suarez. Didn't come to pass. But what did come is a couple of relievers that have been, I would say, useful in Montero's case and over-the-top excellent in Finnegan's case, and a couple starters that we are now getting as much, if not substantially more, than we could have bargained for when we dealt for him at the deadline. I think Charlie Morton is going to make a playoff start for us. Like, who had that on the bingo card even 3 months ago? I think that's almost a certainty at this point. I think both Montero and Finnegan factor into the playoff roster. I mean, obviously Finnegan does. I was pretty optimistic from the start, just because I didn't expect something big, and I could see Scott Harris's fingerprints on all four of those moves. For better or worse, I kind of trust the guy at this point, and it's early days. Obviously, it's been a month at this point since the deadline. Like, I'm not ready to say, oh, the man's a genius from these couple moves, but early returns are good.
I agree. And in sports, it's interesting to me. I'm kind of more of a long-term guy. That I also agree with that plan. I like that plan. It's hard. Some fans, but we're now in an instant gratification culture, and it's hard to do that. Thankfully, Harris has some pretty good, it helps when you can get some job stability. This is kind of an underrated thing in sports, because if you can get in there and find your manager, obviously he's done that. He's got a great staff. He's got a good front office staff from what I can see. He's built up the systems. So he's got some credibility there. He's not on the hot seat. He's not close to the hot seat. So he can do his long-term play. Where you get in trouble is you get yourself in a little bit of hot water, you take a move too early, and then you have to make subsequent moves that then are riskier and riskier, and now you're going away from, to use a baseball analogy, trying to hit singles and doubles to just going with a home run swing every time. And really, a team like the Tigers only basically have one home run swing. They have a lot of minor league players that are very valuable, but it still is tough to put them all in one basket and try to make that swing. I like the more sustainable build. It should mean that they have more years of competition. And in baseball, we both know that the more years you can be in competition, who knows, if you can put yourself in competition for 5 years or so, maybe you have that one hot year out of that 5 where maybe you weren't the best team headed in. They're not the odds-on favorite to win the World Series this year, but who's to say they couldn't get hot in the playoffs and go all of the way? We've seen some runs like that somewhat recently with the Rangers and other teams.
Yeah, it's like you're living in my brain. I basically agree with every single word that you said, and that is largely how I view the Tigers in the future. One point I'll add to that is it is a perfect symbiosis between Scott Harris and Chris Ilitch. Chris doesn't want to spend. I think we all are aware of that at this point, and he's found a guy that I think largely doesn't ask that of him. Like he has always promised that like when the time is right, he'll spend, whatever. I'm not sure that I believe that, and I'm not sure that I necessarily think that I care, which is one thing. I will say the only thing that puts a little bit of a dampen on the whole let's keep this window open as long as we can, which I absolutely agree with, is the Skubal contract. It's this year, it's next year, and then he's gone. Like I don't want to get too pessimistic, but he's going to get $500 million on the open market. Do we think that's going to be from us? I don't necessarily. That being said, people lose good players all the time and they move on. I don't know that window necessarily means that you move everything else in your organization around to accommodate that. And I think that's what Scotty's done. And it'll be interesting to see how that situation is resolved in the off season. I don't want to look ahead. I want to enjoy these next couple months because it's going to be some awesome couple months, hopefully. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens with Skubal this offseason.
I agree, and that is a tough one. That's for most teams, because really a lot of the teams in the Detroit market right now are kind of following a similar path. That's what I find so interesting. Is there a lot of them are building a young core and then hopefully investing in that young core. We're seeing that process happen with the Lions. It's starting to happen with the Pistons. It's starting to happen with the Red Wings, and it should happen with the Tigers. But with guys like Skubal, it is going to be tough because, like you said, I can see this kind of going two ways because I know I do think he wants to stay with the Tigers. That's not just, oh, hey, he wants to stay with our team. I think he likes what he's been building. I think he likes the clubhouse, but he's also a competitive guy. He's going to want to get the top dollar, not for his bank account so much, but because he wants to be that top guy. He's competitive. He's going to be competitive with those other salaries. So between those two things, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It makes me think of, because when you were talking about the trade deadline, I felt the same way as you did in my earlier answer with a lot of your preaching patience and talking about who you were interested in and not wanting to give up too much. You guys didn't discuss this really at all in the trade deadline review, but the craziest take that I heard around the trade deadline was the idea of acquiring Skeens to go with Skubal. I was like, wait, we're going to get two of these guys now that we're not going to be able to re-sign, but we're going to give up a bunch of assets for the other one. I'm a little lost here, but at least with Skubal, you can get a large asset package if that ends up being what you have to do, and you referenced this summer as a possibility and seeing what happens, but that you would at least get a high return, and you've got a lot of young guys in the farm system too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was intrigued by the whole Skeens thing. I don't know that there was like ever any actual legs. It's just kind of an interesting thought experiment, and I don't want to relitigate something that has already happened, but I think the main driver behind that was the fact that you would go for this year only, and next year, I guess, you would go 1-2 with Skubal and Skeens in a playoff series. And that is really, really tempting. Like, that shortened series is so much, and it makes it so much easier to win. That being said, baseball is a super weird game, and having the two most dominant starting pitchers in the series does not guarantee you anything. So there was obvious flaws in the plan too, but it was fun to think about for a hot minute.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's a fun thought experiment. It just was funny to me. It was like, I can see your argument for it because it's basically like, a rental, but it's a weird version of a rental. You're not renting an older player. You're renting a younger player that you know probably isn't going to stay, and then maybe you can flip him and get assets again, maybe less because he's closer to his contract deadline. But yeah, that is an interesting thought experiment. I want to come back and talk about some of the other players that they acquired, because we're both similarly high on one of them, and to talk more about the Tigers here. So stick with us. You're listening to Sports Intel on Jethro FM.
Ryan Walsh here to tell you about my realtor, Jim Hegland of JH Realty Partners. Jim has 50 years of experience, and he's an accredited buyer representative. That's why I chose Jim to help me when I purchased my home. Jim specializes in condos as well as resort, second home, and international properties. If you have real estate questions or for your next purchase or sale, reach out to my realtor, Jim Hegland with JH Realty. His phone number is 616-540-5770. That's 616-540-5770.
Having a nice conversation here with Jordan Hall of the Eat 'em Up Pod. Jordan, I know from the trade, we've been talking a lot about the trade deadline, but obviously the acquisitions there will be key for the run. And I was similarly high on Charlie Morton when they acquired him, because I know he's on the older side, but pairing him with his old manager, getting that veteran presence there, and there was a real reason to believe in him given the upward trend in his stats too. So it wasn't just hope against hope. It was the fact that when you look at his more recent splits, he was looking pretty good, and then you unite him with his manager, with that great pitching coach staff, and I think you really got something there. And now you've got a situation where you've got almost more. That was the thing I liked about the deadline is, yes, they didn't necessarily go with one of those big closers or one of the big names, but they did get quantity guys that you felt like you could get a couple quality guys out of, and I think we're already seeing that to a degree, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlie Morton is my absolute favorite topic to talk about right now. I think it was a stroke of genius by Scott Harris. Would I have loved him 8 years ago? Yeah, that'd have been awesome, but I'll take him now. You could see things were getting better down the stretch with Baltimore. I think that our lovely local media likes to decide that was AJ Hinch's doing when they had their conversation in the dugout, in the clubhouse when Baltimore was in town. It does look like things have gotten better from there. I don't think AJ has magic words. That being said, he has been honestly nothing short of spectacular since coming over. He's got 3 quality starts, and honestly, I think the start that wasn't quality was maybe the best he's looked. He struck out 7 in a row at one point, 10 overall. Gave up 6 earned in that game, but it was basically a bunch of bloopers, and then he hung 2 curveballs that got hit out. Obviously, that's baseball. That happens all the time. But I thought he looked really, really good in that start too. This is a guy that I've loved for a long time, dating back to the Rays, dating back to all of the big runs with Houston. I think what it comes back to with me for Charlie, specifically for the 4 starts that he's made for us, you look at him and he doesn't look like a 41-year-old pitcher. He doesn't pitch like he's nibbling corners to try to get the most out of his 92-mile-an-hour fastball. The dude is still bringing it. The curveball is still really, really good. I don't necessarily think there's any reason to think that he's going to slow down this pace. And I just think that Scott Harris got us an off-the-radar, somebody that we weren't even considering gem. And if this is the end of his career, I think he's going to blow it out in a big way.
That was one of the big things of the trade deadline that I was a little confused about as far as fan reaction, because you can have your opinions about, okay, I would have liked to have seen them take a bigger swing, and we talked about kind of the philosophy angle already, but to me, it's more about value. Did you get good value for the assets that you sent out? And I think objectively, even at the time, it was hard to say no to that, because they just didn't give up much to get.
Yeah, they gave literal cash for him, a bucket of balls. Yeah,
exactly. For Morton in particular, and for the guys as a whole, they really didn't give up. And they gave up a clubhouse guy in Jim Jarvis, who's a good. He was a good part of the culture there, I think. And I know you and I both are buddies with the Tigers minor league report guys, so they'd be able to answer those questions a lot better than we would. But I don't think they thought much of those folks that were being sent out. And I even talked to one of the executives at the Whitecaps about some of them. But there's so many people in that farm system that they can call through, especially that level. And then, you're returning guys that the idea that you're getting a guy that has a good history, has a history with people on your staff, and you've got a history of being able to turn pitchers around. Between all those things, why take a swing at an asset that's valued high? Why don't you take an undervalued asset, a distressed asset, and try to tweak them a little bit?
Yeah, and I think that's something that AJ and Chris Fetter bring to this organization, and obviously the entire pitching staff, Robin Lund, Juan Nieves, the whole crew. We make players better at the big league level. I've been watching the Tigers for a long time, 36 years old. Like, I've seen many Tigers teams. We consistently did not do that for basically the entirety of my fandom until this new regime. It is something that is not common. It's something that I think that we undervalue and underappreciate currently. I suspect that we will come to value it more and more as we're just exposed to it more. But yeah, guys come here and they get better by and large. And there's a reason that Scott Harris has taken a chance on so many guys like Sean Gunther, Brennan Hanafy, Tyler Holton, and been willing to essentially place his faith in some of these guys and in his staff to make them better, to fill out this roster. And like, it's kind of hard to hate on the results. It's largely come to fruition for him.
I agree. And even because I think the big thing for me when they were going for the closer, I knew they needed back end bullpen help. We all knew that, but I wasn't in favor of trying to give up a large asset for a guy like Bednar or some of those other guys. I liked what they gave up for Finnegan, and granted, it's worked out well so far. We'll see how the rest of it goes. I'm not saying that he's better than those guys, but for what you gave up, and if that's a guy that they liked his stuff and liked the tweaks they could make, like Montero too, you could see that he was working on that split finger, and they probably liked the progression of that before they traded for him. So although I know Atlanta fans were saying, "Hey, take him, we don't want him," I'm sure the Detroit guys were going, "Hey, yeah, okay, we will take them, and we'll try to tweak them, and we like what we can work with here."
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have a lot more faith in Finnegan than I do Montero, just because.
Oh, of course.
The back end numbers aren't so hot on Montero, but yeah, I mean, especially with Finnegan, like Alex and we followed this up pretty closely, and I genuinely hadn't heard of the two guys that we had traded for him. So it really limits the downside. I know he's a rental. Hopefully we'll be in the mix to re-sign him because I really like him. But yeah, it just seems like that Scott Harris has a coherent strategy that he is absolutely sticking to. And say what you want about it. Like, I'm in favor of it. I know a lot of people have other opinions, but we are an organization with a direction, which I really appreciate. And it's been a minute since we'd had that before.
Definitely. And there's something to be said with what you were talking about earlier with the build and the fact that I get it. Everybody wants people to spend, and the elder Illich was a spender. I remember that era. You were talking about an older guy that came over and was kind of trying to paint the corners and stuff. It made me have images of Kenny Rogers. I loved that era of the Tigers, and I loved him coming over, and he reminded me of the old pitcher from Major League where he was just putting all sorts of stuff on the ball, the different substances everywhere. Yeah. And yeah, Morton's not that. He's a little different than that, but they were willing to spend in that era, but it still didn't amount to a World Series. Not to be negative, they got to 2. They didn't win either in that era. But then there was a huge fallout afterwards. This is a little bit more of a sustainable arc, and that should make it more fun for a longer period of time here, especially if they're able to identify talent and build up the coffers, because those 2 eras in juxtaposition are also what we have to think of. Dombrowski is the type to clear out the coffers, clear out the minor leagues and get those assets, and that's why his teams tend to do pretty well, but they often need time to rebuild. He usually leaves the team without much in the cupboard, and so they had to build that up, but now that's full. The major league roster is doing well, and they're kind of hitting on all cylinders now.
Yeah, definitely. I loved the Dombrowski era. I'm not going to lie. Like, it was so much fun. But the whole time you kind of knew, like, eventually you're going to have to pay the piper. And we paid that piper for a very, very long time. And to me, this is just strictly as a fan perspective, not necessarily like an analyst per se. I enjoy the narrative of building an organization. Like, I like watching Max Clark and McGonigal at single A, and then how are they going to do it double A? When do they get moved up to triple? Like, I enjoy all of these things. I like seeing guys like Briseño pop from nowhere into, now all of a sudden he's a top 50 prospect. And just the development that is going to make the team, when it's complete, and obviously a baseball team is never complete. It's an ever-evolving thing. But by the time those guys all reach the big leagues, they combine with guys like Torque and Riley, like, it's going to be really satisfying to watch, because our investment of time and effort and energy and all this kind of stuff, like, it's not like, all of a sudden we now have Justin Upton and he's hitting 4th for us. There was build up to that, and I think it goes kind of like what you were saying against the whole instant gratification, and sometimes it's a little better when you wait for it.
It is. It's true for sports, I think, and for other things too, I suppose. But just that the longer build is usually more sustainable with all of these things. But yeah, I appreciate the discussion, and it's been fun to talk about this. So hopefully we'll have a lot of weeks to talk about this. So we'll look forward to having you back on here at some point in the stretch run, hopefully for the Tigers.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall, DDS, Calder Financial Group, Grand Management, Rydan Investments, JH Realty Partners, and Encore Business Group. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.